We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Liberty Nation senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner. Now, earlier in the show, we briefly discussed the danger zone for Joe Biden and family with the results of the Comer press conference. But now I'd like to talk a little broader about the field for 2024. Now, Tim, do you think that we discussed that earlier that this will affect Joe Biden's ability to claim the moral authority. But there's other things impacting Joe Biden as well, aren't there? There's this thing about the 51 intelligence agency people putting together a letter at the behest of somebody within the intelligence agency to give to Joe Biden. I mean, isn't he losing on all fronts here?
Well, Mark, think about where the 2024 presidential race stood in mid-November of this year compared to now. That was 6 months ago, right?
Yeah.
6 months ago, Ron DeSantis was a conquering hero. He had won a landslide victory in Florida, reelected as governor. He was challenging Trump and even surpassing him in some of the polls. But Joe Biden stood an even higher, political ground at that time because they had sidestepped a potential bloodbath for Democrats in the midterm elections. So it looked to be Biden-DeSantis, with Biden probably favored, if only because of incumbency. Now, here we are 6 months later. Biden is way down, DeSantis is way down, and Trump is way up. I mean, you think about where Trump was in mid-November when he made his announcement for his third presidential run. It was a very sparse gathering, almost grim, when he announced it. Since then, and following his prosecution, which, well, he hasn't been prosecuted, but he's been indicted. But I was going to say his prosecution would be seen as persecution. And the point is that has rallied many Republicans to his side, including, for example, Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running against Trump, but stood up today and said, this is unjust, this settlement for Trump's civil case. It makes no sense. They didn't convict him of rape, but they awarded $5 million anyway, even though the charge was rape. So they basically concocted stuff. So you've got even Ramaswamy and you've got DeSantis having to defend Trump, who they're running against on the legal front, right? On the legal front, they're saying that this is a persecution, and that just drives Trump's numbers way up. I think Joe Biden increasingly, and I think it was an ABC News poll this past weekend that really got the left's attention, that people like Donna Brazile were saying, let's not sugarcoat this. This looks awful for Joe Biden. The majority of his party doesn't want him to run. Like 60% of the country thinks he's too old and too cognitively infirmed.
I've got those numbers in my head, Tim, those numbers. It was 32% of the 1,006 people polled. It was ABC and a prominent Washington newspaper poll. It was 32% said he's not mentally fit or capable of managing the presidency. 33% said that he's not. Oh, sorry, no. 32% said he was capable, meaning that the rest didn't think he was.
I was going to say, I think you saw a different poll.
33% said that he was physically capable of doing that. Now, funnily enough, that's Trump almost doubled those numbers in terms of who thought he was mentally and physically capable. An interesting point here is that of that, it was about 20% of Democrats who said that. Now that's a fifth of the voting Democrats. If he loses a fifth of his voting Democrats because they don't want to vote for somebody who they themselves say is neither physically nor mentally capable of managing the presidency, does that sink him completely, losing that fifth? Or, as we've often discussed, will they just vote for him anyway because, hey, he's not Donald Trump?
Let's put it this way. In any kind of ordinary election, which we haven't seen really since 2012, an election that America's become accustomed to. Those kind of numbers would lead probably Chuck Schumer to walk over to the White House and say, Mr. President, your time is up. Yeah. You can't possibly win against any generic Republican. The thing that gives them a shot is that Trump remains such a wild card and so despised by so many people that they can run a completely defensive platform saying, look, no matter what you think of us, we're not Trump. We can protect you against Trump. We did it once. We can do it again. I mean, that's the only argument really that Biden can make. And if Ron DeSantis or someone else gets the Republican nomination, he doesn't even have that to try and scare people about DeSantis, sure. But that didn't work about Trump in 2016, did it?
No, but it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because before he declared for the presidency as a Republican, Donald Trump was beloved by the very same people who admonish him and demean him now in many ways. He was beloved by the political left. And it was only because he went against the party power system that he became persona non grata. Now, as you point out, Ron DeSantis isn't in that position at the moment, but you can see the groundwork, can't you? With this, that falsely labeling his stuff, the "Don't Say Gay" bill, where obviously
right. No,
say that at all.
They're trumping him.
They're trumping him.
They're pulling a full Trump on DeSantis because they're actually, and I think by most accounts, they're more scared of DeSantis than Trump because they cannot scare off as many people with DeSantis as they can with Trump. I think they feel like if it's DeSantis, that Biden can't possibly win. With Trump, they feel he can because he beat him once. The big difference, of course, is that Biden now has a record that he has to run on, and he doesn't have a pandemic to vault him into office like it did in 2020. So it's a grim outlook for Joe Biden. But I think they still are in the process of trying to lure Republican voters to Trump so that he can become the nominee, and then they can savage him like never before, if that's even possible, to go worse on him than they have in the past.
All right, one final quick fire question for you, Tim. What do you think the odds are of Trump and DeSantis making a single ticket?
Well, I think that's the most intriguing possibility for, I think, every Republican in the nation -2. And those two are Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. Can they get past their egos to understand that it's a dream team ticket? I think it can be done. And the reason is, if this was in 8 years, 8 more years that Trump was looking at, I think it would be impossible because DeSantis isn't going to sit in a position that one vice president called a warm bucket of spit for 8 years. But he will do it for 4 in order to have a platform to run for himself in 2028. And Trump, in turn, should not feel threatened by DeSantis because he can only serve 4 years and will become a lame duck as soon as he's elected.
Tim Donner, thanks ever so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
It's been fun as always, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe space.
You only did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.